Hello, my name is Krystal Clark, and for this interpersonal communication project, I have decided to call my presentation The Height of My Communication Goals. I have future aspirations of working in the mental health department in my local community. I was born and raised in a rural county, and I raised my children here, and I feel it's very important to put back. I wish to work with individuals of mood disorders or anxiety disorders, any other psychological disorders. I feel like communication with them is very tough, and I need to improve my skills to be able to do that properly. The purpose for this is to identify my own mistakes and areas that I should show improvement in as I graduate and introduce myself into the field of counseling. Moving on to my overarching goal, I wanted to make sure I included everything that we've learned over the past 8 weeks in my goal. So I set my goal as being able to hold in and examine wrongly timed phrases or other personal ideas during the middle of someone else's sentences or thoughts, and will allow me to stop myself from constantly interrupting and creating a confusing moment in the conversation, and most importantly, will help me form more appropriate responses. My goal circumferences everything that we've talked about: listening skills, expressing ourselves and how we exhale to others, self-awareness, and my aspirations of where I want to be while I'm building my communication skills. Moving on to backgrounds, everyone has good qualities and bad qualities that can follow them into adulthood from their background. Good qualities that I possess from my parents were very nurturing, and they taught me to understand that everyone needs to be heard. Everyone has a voice, everyone is different, and that we are allowed to be different, and we should respect others' opinions even if we don't agree with them. I have more bad communication that I could identify with than good, however. When my parents were divorcing, I was around 14, and up until that point, I was led to believe that there were no problems in my parents' relationship, and I was constantly told this. So when the day came that I found out they were divorcing, that misguided communication of them shielding me really turned bad, because I couldn't trust what they were saying. And now, thinking back after taking courses, maybe I could have read body language better, and I could have determined what problems were going on instead of finding everything out at one time. I think that really dampened my trust in communication. Also, after the divorce, I was put in a position of mediator. I was put above my parents and in a dominant position where I was told, tell your father this or tell your mother that, or he said this or she said that, and I was placed above my parents in a way that I could play them against each other or have the outcome that I wanted to. And for a teenager, that is too much power. Those traits allowed me to have my behavioral blend that I do. And I fall into the D category of DISC. I have dominant, direct, determined, and demanding. I can see those qualities in myself, and I don't necessarily like them. Sometimes they can be a bad thing. I can overpower someone else in a conversation. In the field that I'm going into, that's something that I don't want to do. I want them to have the control. They should be the ones expressing themselves, and I'm there to listen to them, to understand what they're going through. Those bad qualities that I saw in myself created some communication barriers. So moving on to those, exhaling is only half of the communication process. I have more problems with inhaling. I feel like if I inhale better, my exhale will take care of itself. And I understand that how people perceive me is based on how I communicate with them. And I learned that also from my parents' divorce. I come off as dominant and demanding to get where I want to be. But in this field, I need to let the other person do the talking, and I should listen so that they can determine what their needs are and what they feel they need to work on. And I have a very assured attitude, and sometimes that can be really good, but in other times people want to feel like they are right. And if I'm constantly feeling that my way is right, I'm sure, that's not going to help the communication process. Some resources that I pulled from our text that were very important to me and very helpful to me. Peterson's Why Don't We Listen Better? He talked on pages 14 and 15 about a way for people to have a conversation but also have two separate conversations at the same time. I feel like after reading this, I can see myself doing this. I can go along with another person's communication and conversation and make it sound like I'm intrigued in theirs when really I'm pulling away at my own tangents. For example, it rained yesterday. The person expressing that they like the rain and how the rain makes them feel. But me, I would run it off as, yeah, it rained yesterday and my chairs outside got wet. I need to dry them off. That would be inappropriate response to their phrase that they had just said. I should go along more with what they were going through and how they felt. Another resource that I really liked was the empathetic listening skills. Again, I can really see how my listening skills need to be improved after taking this 8-week course. Burley Allen described empathetic listening skills as being attentive and being interested in what the other person is saying. I feel like I do that very poorly. I need to be more involved in what I'm hearing and take that in and focus on points in their conversation and their topic and go off of those versus running off on my own tangents. Moving on to the ground rules of empathetic listening. Those skills I can use daily. They're easy to remember. I can use them before, during, and after a conversation and communication. I can go back and see where I made my mistakes. And then I can move on to a new conversation and identifying what I did before and changing that in the current. And some of those ground rules were don't interrupt and don't run off subject and don't get into my internal distractions. Those things I can see myself really doing. Inhaling strategies are the key for me. Selecting, organizing, and inferring, and referring back to those ground rules, those will really help me in the future. So for my plan of action, I have decided to do a few different things. I mentioned just a second ago about going back to the beginning of the conversation and seeing what I did wrong. Then playing that out in my head of how I could have better responded. Then taking those and applying that into a future conversation. I think being able to do that in simple conversations with my children or my husband or my coworkers or the lady at the grocery store are the first keys in helping me. In conclusion, I found a quote by Epictetus. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. I feel like I have 2 mouths and 1 ear, and that's where I need to improve at. I need to get rid of that mouth and add another ear and my listening skills. So we see that in the beginning, communication was distorted for me through my parents, and my ability to be dominant over situations has created problems in my communication levels, and that's where I need to make improvements on. The last quote I would like to leave you with is, the most important thing in communication is hearing what isn't said and looking at someone who is expressing themselves to you and judging their body language on how you are giving them is the key. Thanks for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful holidays.